Welcome, everybody, to today's Intelligent Property Investor Masterclass. Oh boy, have we had a interesting week. There's been lots of things that have come out during the news. Now, just to remind you, I do these on a regular basis, in fact, every week. And the reason I do them is to make you more intelligent, so to make sure that you make better decisions, because better decisions make more money. And in this market, I tell you, that's what you want to be doing, because there's plenty out there to be making lots of money on right now. Now, if you're listening to me on any of the platforms where I'm doing this as a podcast, I really super encourage you to go across to my website, iloverealestate.tv, and make sure that you get all of my charts, because I've got a big research team behind me that put all this stuff together for me, and we talk about it and what's happening, etc. So I've got lots and lots of information to share with you, and make sure that you get those charts as well, and subscribe, so that way you get notified that these come out to you all the time. So you're staying on top of exactly what's going on in the property space, and not necessarily buying into a lot of the mainstream media stuff, which the information isn't always accurate, I've got to tell you. So let's get into this week. What's going on? It's official. We have the hottest auction market ever. Isn't that crazy? Right around the country. Now, during the week, APRA came out and they put the banks on notice again. But fortunately, this time their changes and what they've been doing with the banks have been relatively subtle, because you've got to remember, I'm the one who called them the economic terrorists of Australia back when they did things and they hit everything with a sledgehammer back in 2017. Well, this time they haven't brought out the sledgehammer, but they probably bought out a hammer where they probably could have done things with a scalpel, let's face it. So fortunately, I think we'll see where this goes, but they haven't been as bad as they were last time. So why APRA is worried about the exact thing that the politicians have been out there trying to create for the last 10 years, and why I think the pollies will win this one. And there's a bit of policy fighting going on within the government at the moment. How we end up with the hottest auction market ever, even in traditional auction black spots where we don't like auctions, and why this is the toughest rental market ever. So we've got a lot of evers this week, and why normal will make them even tougher. So what is the new normal? Let's start with the governments. Look, the governments are fighting with each other. We've got the APRA fighting with the Reserve Bank of Australia. We've got APRA fighting with this federal government. We've got APRA fighting with the state government. And it's crazy what's going on at the moment. I don't think one end of the government's talking to the other at the moment. Let's start with APRA and the Reserve Bank of Australia. See, we had the Reserve Bank of Australia came out a couple of months ago now and said, we are not going to raise interest rates until we meet certain targets. And if the property prices is a byproduct of us keeping low interest rates, so be it. So they don't really care about what's happening in the property price market. Whereas APRA, on the other hand, are going, oh, we're getting too hot, the lending ratio's too hot and all this kind of stuff. So they've stuck their sticky nose in again. I'm not so concerned this time, because I actually think there's a little bit of warrant in what they're doing here, but I'll get to that in a minute. So this is an article that came out during the week. APRA tightens lending rules to target property boom. Well, it's not really they're targeting the property boom. What they're actually targeting is lending ratios. So this is called the macroprudential restrictions. It's a big word. What it basically means is whatever your current interest rate is, they're adding, when they assess you for a loan, somewhere between 2.5% to 3%. So they've increased it from 2.5% to 3%. So that is the official line now. If you're paying 3% on your mortgage and you're going to go for a new mortgage, they're going to assess it as if you're paying 6% interest. Now, why are they doing this? Well, I've got a little bit of a take on that, and it's more about the first home buyer market than anything. But Eliza Owen came out during the week from CoreLogic and described the changes as subtle. Doesn't see it having a big impact, but more macro-prudential restrictions may be coming. And that's the big worry, that APRA is going to put their big stick into gear again and start really hammering the economy. Look, maybe, hopefully, APRA learned its lesson from what it did back in 2017, got total egg over its face with what they did with the bank restrictions back then. They really killed the economy. It was APRA who killed the economy. And we saw, a massive contraction in the economy. And if that had been let go for very much longer, we could have even been looking at a recession, even without COVID. So, APRA better be absolutely careful in what they're doing here. They're a law unto themselves, I'm afraid. And this chart really shows that. It shows the effect of what those APRA changes did. If you go back there to 2017 when they made those dramatic changes and effect on the banks, it brought the economy down nearly 15%. Then we started to pick up again through the latter end of 2019. And then, of course, we had COVID, so down she came again. And we've been growing out of that. So these restrictions have come off a little bit. That second coming back there is more about the lockdowns than anything else. But we'll see what effect these new APRA changes actually have. And look, their reason for doing things is because nearly 22% of all new loans funded for the June quarter had a debt-to-income ratio of 6 times or more. Now, that's a level that APRA considers to be too risky. So, for instance, if you had a loan, if you had an income of, say, $100,000, it means that the banks are lending you $600,000 or more. So that's their concern, and that's up from last year. Look, last year it was 16%. Last year it was 22%. This year, I don't really see that as a massive thing because last year was extraordinary. We were in the midst of COVID, so I don't think you can compare anything to last year. We actually have to go back 2 years in order to get some kind of accurate figure. But for all households, the debt-to-income ratios reached a record high for owner-occupiers of 102%. Now, that's annual housing credit growth of 5.6%. is outstripping income growth, which is only there at 1.6%. So let's just deal with that for a moment. First of all, the wages. Now, look, wages are low. They haven't gone up for about 6 years. We've had a lot of knocks. We had, first of all, the knock that APRA caused in the first place from 2017. And then we've had the knock of COVID, and we really haven't got to a stage where we've recovered from that enough that the unions and the like are saying, well, come on, boys, you're making some good profits. It's now time to start increasing wages. So now that we have such a strong employment rate and our unemployment rate is coming down dramatically, we're going to start to see wage pressure. That's not a bad thing because we haven't had it for a long time. And until we start to get that wage pressure up and we start to go right across the industries, we'll start to see a little bit more inflation and other things start to happen, which is not a bad thing because we're very low from the inflation perspective. Come back to the increase in credit. Obviously, cheap money has meant that a lot of people are going out there buying more homes. But I believe the real instigator of these problems, as the APRA sees them as being problems, and why we see debt-to-income ratios so high, is because the governments have been pushing the first home buyers. Now, first home buyers are traditionally the ones that are out there with 5% deposits and 2.5% deposits in some cases in mortgage insurance territory. And they're the ones that are the most vulnerable. They're the ones most at risk. So we saw the same thing happen back through GFC, and we're seeing the same thing happen again now. Now, the reason there's been such a push for the first home buyers is because we've got things like the state government. Even this week, Victorian state government came out with a new $500 million home buyers fund where they're going to be part owners in properties to the tune of something like 3,000 homes. Well, you've got state governments going, here's some money. If you're a first home buyer, get out there and buy homes. And APRA's going, oh, no, we want to make sure that that they don't get that lending ratio too high. But the two don't match. We've got one fighting the other. At a federal level, we've got the same thing. We've got the first home loans deposit scheme, with the extra $10,000. And then on top of that, we've got the state, all the states have got their first home buyers grants. And then we had the big push from the federal government about the home builders grant that we had in there as well. So you've got all of this money going into the building and construction industry, and that's what's causing this. We've got cheap money on one hand, we've got money pouring out into the industry to get you into homes. Of course, the banks are going to be in a situation where their lending ratios are a little bit higher than they normally have been. So, you start to look at which states are being affected the most. New South Wales is the highest. Surprise, surprise. Then we have Queensland, Victoria, and you can read the rest for yourself. ACT comes in pretty close after that. Then South Australia, WA, Tassie, and even the Northern Territory at 3% there. So that's where the big push has been. But it's interesting when you start to have a look at the age groups. Because if you look at the age groups, you can see there that the biggest age group, the biggest taker-upper of all of this with the first home buyers' money and the home loans and everything going out, the assistance, is between that 18 to 29-year-olds. Well, they are the most vulnerable, but they're also the highest risk takers because they're the youngest and they've got more time to earn more money and all of those things. So when we look at risk from an economics perspective, it's to be expected. And if those, if that group was caught up in interest rates rising and they started to have to sell their properties and other things, I think there's enough interest in the market, and once we open the borders, other things are going to change as well, that they won't actually be losing money. It's not going to cause a crash in the market, but some people definitely are overextended on their mortgages, and it was really brought about by a lot of the schemes that came out at a state and federal level. When you start to have a look at what people are earning to get all of that extra assistance for a single applicant, you can see there basically most of it's gone to somewhere between 45,000 through to 80 to 100,000. That's the most recipients of the money. And then if you look at the light blue line for a couples, we're talking about a combined income of somewhere around 100 to 125, 150 thereabouts. So that's the type of income bracket that a lot of that money has gone out to. It's not something to be concerned about, but it's interesting to watch. From an investor perspective, it means you've got to make sure that all of your properties count, that you're not sitting there with just another ho-hum property that's not going anywhere, because from a lending perspective, it might get a little bit tighter. But what it also means is that now now's the time to be stepping up anyway. Now's the time to get educated. Now's the time to really make your portfolio work really super hard because of the market that we're in. And you've got the potential to do that. And that's why I offer my breakthrough sessions. I've got advisors sitting by ready to talk to you guys about your situation and where you want to head and your goals and all of those things and how we can help you. So they're breakthrough sessions. They're free. All you've got to do to pick up on one of those is go to iloverealestate.tv/questions/ and there's appointment times there. You can lock in one of those appointments. They're about 60 minutes long. And we can show you how stepping up and getting yourself educated can really, really benefit you in this market. Then the second point that I raised there before was this is the hottest auction market ever. And we have clearance rates right across all of the cities sitting up over 80%. Now, Sydney and Melbourne often get to these kind of rates, but it's unheard of to have auctions in Adelaide and Brisbane and Darwin and Perth at these kind of levels. We just don't get hung up on auctions. It's not our thing. Well, I tell you what, it's our thing now because, the clearance rates are just phenomenal. This is the most recent chart there you can see of auction clearance rates. And we're up there in the highest. We're up there as high as we ever have been back in 2014, 2016. That's when auction clearance rates were right up there. We started to get up there again at the end of 2019, and then of course COVID hit, and we see that great big drop there from there. Well, we're back up there again. So this is something that is really fueling a lot of the market, and it's just another indicator that the market has a massive trend upwards, which I think we all know. That's what it looks like in actual percentage figures, not as a chart, but in a bar chart there. And you can see, look, they're all over 80% in the major cities, including Perth, that's never been known to have high clearance rates from an auction. They're normally just buy it. This chart kind of says the same thing, but it actually talks about numbers. Now, the big numbers here, obviously in Sydney and Melbourne, they are the biggest cities that really dominate the auction, the auction as a form of selling. But even Brisbane, even Adelaide, Canberra typically follows Sydney, but they're up there as well. Now, this chart is actually quite important because what it shows is the monthly sales relative to the same month the year before. Now, the dark blue line at the top is 2020, and you can see we are actually selling more houses now than we did in any of the previous years, right back to 2017. Now, why is that the case? I keep talking about the lack of supply. Why are we selling more? Because basically anything that goes on the market sells. So previously we had more supply, we had more properties on the market, but they didn't all sell. Now, everything that goes on the market sells. So that's why we're seeing that really high sales rate compared to what they've been in previous years. And this is what's fueling it, or partly fueling it. We've got very low interest rates. And, I don't think interest rates are going to go up quickly. They will go up eventually. But I think we've still got at least 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, a year, and possibly even more before we start to see much of an increase in interest rates. So good time to be making hay while the sun shines. Now, that's really flowing through into lending. So what we see here is lending is up, loans are up right across the board. All the banks are reporting it. So we've got record lending as well. And this is even, again, higher than what we saw pre-GFC. So record lending, record pricing, record levels of auctions, record levels of volume of sales. It's all going on at the moment. And this is the home price index, and you can see how quickly that's really come up. So from the very depths of where we were with COVID. Now that all flows through to the rental market as well. And we've got the toughest rental market we've seen ever, not since a year ago, 10 years ago, 40 years ago. This is ever. The vacancy data is incredibly tight across the country. There's no city that's escaping this, and this is driving a huge surge in rental pricing. Rental pricing is up 8.9%. If you look at the cities nationally, just for the month, we saw 1.7%, and you can see what they are right across Sydney, up in the month in the 12 months there the month of September, we're seeing 2.4%. And that's what we're seeing right across the gate. We're seeing these vacancy rates coming down. So rentals are going up 8.9%. Vacancies are coming down. Vacancies are coming down nationally at 1.7%. Sydney's down 2.4%. Melbourne's down 3.4%. They had a big oversupply in units, remember, so they're not going to be as good as some of the other figures there. Whereas Brisbane's down 1.3, we're sitting out there. Perth 0.6, Adelaide 0.5, Hobart 0.4, Canberra 0.9, and Darwin at 0.6. So all the vacancies are going down, and you put that into a chart. That's what Sydney looks like. Look at that downward slide. Look at Melbourne, not as dramatic as Sydney, but again, that's because Melbourne's got a massive oversupply of units. And this is a combination of units and housing when you look at these figures. There's Brisbane, gradual slide right back through from 2017. It's getting tighter and tighter and tighter, and it's crazy right now. Look at Perth, same thing. Now that's off the back of the mining boom. But Perth has been slowly improving from a rental yield perspective. Adelaide, the same story. Look at Darwin. Even Darwin's down at practically no vacancies, and it's crazy. I think a lot of that is about people entering in through Darwin and then just sitting there and waiting to see what actually happens. So I don't think that's a long-term trend for Darwin, but it's certainly where it sits at the moment. So 8.9% year on year through to September. And that's the chart. Visually look at that chart, see where the increases are. I mean, Darwin, it's up nationally. We're sitting at 8.9% up from a rental perspective. Darwin is up 21% on houses and 20% on units. We haven't seen this ever. The dragger in the chain there, of course, is Melbourne, and as I said, massively oversupplied there in units, and then probably sluggish from a housing perspective because of all the lockdowns. I feel for you guys down in Victoria with all your lockdowns and everything else going on. You really have got little Hitler in charge there. I hope next time you vote him out because, oh my God, he's ruining your state. Not that I've got any political bias or whatever else, but I'm telling you, he's a little Hitler. And what's going to happen when we open up the international borders? All of that pressure that we're feeling right now, it's going to be exacerbated when we open up international borders. And where do they traditionally go? Sydney and Melbourne. So those markets are going to be very, very tight, very extreme. And look, the federal government's sitting there ready to open up those markets as soon as it possibly can. The difficulty at the moment is the federal government's got no say, because the state governments are all going, not in my backyard, not in my backyard. So we've got all of these state governments that are ruling the country at the moment. We are not a united Australia. We are very much segregated by our state leaders because they have control over health. And while ever they keep the mandate there on pandemic and everything else, then we're going to be ruled by the state governments, and they don't want to give that up. So they're going to extend that as long as they possibly can, I can tell you. And the federal government's going, we need to open the borders, we need to open the borders, we need to get these people to come in so that we can start to pay for the cost of COVID. And it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. I'm picking probably mid to late next year. And as soon as that happens, we are going to have another massive surge in demand for rentals and demand for housing. And that's going to carry us right through probably to about the mid-20s. So long term, you can see there what's happened from new arrivals. It's fallen off the charts. But that will very quickly turn around as soon as we open up the gates, because as soon as we open up the gates, there's a lot of people queuing there ready to come in. It's just a matter of how many we let in. That's what it'll be about, not how many people want to come, but who are we going to let in. And with the national rental vacancies, as you can see there, they're already low. They're going to get worse. It's going to get worse as soon as those floodgates start to happen. That's just that upward trend I showed you there before. So look, to finish off with our today and what's happening here, I've got a little bit of a quote, and it says, what you do today is what matters most. So make it count. I have a little motto about, trying to do everything that I can today. So if I look back on today, then I'm going to be proud of what I did. Always try and do what your future self will thank you for. And it's that's another version of what I've got there on the screen, because when you're doing that, you're making better decisions. And you're respecting yourself, you're respecting your ability to be able to make decisions and what that means for you into the future. And the better decisions you make, the more money you make. Now, sometimes you're going to stuff up, and that's okay, because in stuffing up, you've got the opportunity to learn. Don't beat yourself up about it. Go and celebrate your mini successes. Go and celebrate the things that are that you've had a little win on. It doesn't have to be huge, but the more you actually acknowledge yourself as successful, the better off you're going to be in the future, because you're training your anatomy to look out for opportunities for success. Your neuropeptides, your neurotransmitters, your energy levels, your quarks, your all sorts of things come into play. Not going to go into it here, but it's really about celebrating those successes and making sure that you are constantly in the frame of the decisions you make today are what's going to be your future tomorrow. And that leads into me saying that I want you to take up one of those free absolutely free 60-minute real estate breakthrough sessions with one of my advisors. All you've got to do is go to iloverealestate.tv/questions/ take them up, and make sure that you're really making today count, making every decision you make from this point forward really count, because in this market, it's an extreme market and you need to be ahead of the curve as much as possible, and you simply don't have time to make mistakes. And those mistakes can be incredibly costly, so we don't want to see you there. One of these appointments is certainly going to set you on the right path. Take them up. They're free. They're with one of my advisors, and that's what you need to do next. So thank you for tuning in to my Intelligent Property Investor Masterclass for the week. Make sure you subscribe so that you get these coming through to you automatically, and you stay on top of things. Make sure you take up one of those free advisor sessions, and I'll be back again next week to share some more exciting things that are going on in our property space next week. So catch you again then, guys. Bye for now. See you next week.